Wait, is this thing on? Can y'all hear me? Okay, here we go.
Woo! Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash.
What's good, sweet peas? Wow, it is wild to be saying that. It is wild that this is season 2. Y'all know I'm always coming in with it's wild, but it really is. It's been such a long time since I've been back on the microphone, but it truly has been a journey. I really actually wanted to launch season 2 in January. I was ready. I was like, season 1 was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I say it every time, but the goal of season 1 was to see if I had the capacity to have a 9-to-5 job and do a podcast. And I think everyone in America would say that nobody actually has a 9-to-5 job. It's either you're waking up earlier or you're staying later or you're doing both. And I just so happen to be in that last bracket. So to be able to do a podcast, for a long time felt very much out of reach, even though it was something that I was so inspired by constantly. It's a platform. It's media content that I really so enjoy. So, it was amazing. After the first season, the reception that I got, it was wonderful. I got to work with so many brilliant people. I got to hear from so many brilliant people, just the guests that came on the show to share their experiences, to share their journeys, to share their insight, to share their expertise. And I think the best part about it was people that, were really inside of my own circle or really just a few steps out of it. And that was such an exciting experience for me because that's really what inspired Just a Dash, So I moved to New York 10 years ago. Come August, let me be specific, 2022, August 2022 will be 10 years in the Big Apple. And it's really mind-boggling to think about that, to think about the fact that I was 21 turning 22 when I came to this city. A lot of people who know me now, I think, would be very surprised at the person I used to be. I think I'm very surprised at the person I used to be in a lot of ways because I don't think you realize your growth, as it's happening. It's always in hindsight that I think I realize how much I've been through, how much I've overcome, how I've evolved, many habits that I've broken, many cycles that I'm still learning to break, but I am recognizing a lot quicker in my life or a lot more quickly. It's a phenomenal feeling. I feel really proud to say that I've made it 10 years in New York, and it's really exciting to say it to people because everyone is like, you're official now. And I'm like, yes, finally, and I feel that way in a lot of ways. I don't feel like you can ever truly master New York if you're a transplant, but I feel a lot more solid. I feel like I'm on a lot more solid ground in terms of knowing how to navigate even in the midst of chaos, because that's what it still is, which I think if you've listened to the first season, you know that I'm the queen of tangents. It's very easy for me to get off track and then circle all the way back, and loop-de-loop-de-loop. So be prepared for that to definitely happen again in this season because this is still just a dash. But before we really jump into some of the changes that are taking place on this podcast episode, and in this season overall, I just wanted to actually give a few updates. I had said in the bonus episode that there would be a new song, to intro this podcast, intro Just a Dash, and it's slightly delayed, which, that happens. It's life sometimes, but it's still happening. I'm still really excited to be collaborating with a musician who I so admire, Lord Scorpio, on a new theme song that really correlates with the theme of this season. Which, speaking of, that's something that's going to be very different about season 2. In season 1, it was very much a hodgepodge of different topics and just different things that I'm constantly thinking about that rummage through my mind on a daily basis. I wish I could say not so frequently, but I am the queen of overthinking, overanalyzing. So it really was kind of rummaging through all the different files that, exist in my mind. And this season is going to be a little bit different. I think with my 10-year anniversary coming up and a lot of changes have taken place in the last, I don't know how many months it's been now. I think it's been 6 or 7 months since season one. A lot of friendships in my life have evolved. Some have ended, or some are dormant. My romantic life is shifting in a way that I am learning to open myself up more to vulnerability, but also to being realistic and not idealistic, breaking cycles, breaking habits, realizing things about my own family, about my own dynamics with people in my life, how much I give, how much I receive, the areas for accountability. Like so much has shifted. So much has shifted in my workspace, my work environment, in what I'm seeking in my life, and what are the next steps for me, learning to be patient, learning to understand that the journey that's ahead for me is already in place. Like there's so much that I've been navigating through and struggling through, and overcoming. And something that I really wanted to share is that in the last few years, I think everybody had to be stuck with themselves, in a way, because of quarantine, because of COVID. And I really had to take a look at how anxiety exists in my life and the areas that it exists in my life where I allow it to have a stronger foothold than I would like. And so in the last few months, I actually tapped into Cerebral, and I've been addressing my own mental health, my own struggles with anxiety and depression. And it's definitely, new. I'm the sort of person who didn't grow up, with that sort of solution, for dealing with anxiety or depression. So it has been a new journey for me to be taking medication, to be talking about it more openly. But the reason I'm bringing it up, and the reason I brought up all those other things, is because this theme for this season is home. And I know that might seem so far-fetched and it might seem so strange how those things connect, but I'm realizing, as someone who moved to New York 10 years ago, it has taken me a very long time to understand what that word actually means, because home is not just a physical place. It is sometimes a mental space. It is sometimes a metaphysical space. It's abstract. It is sometimes an emotional space. It is sometimes another person, an activity. This, home can be so many things and exist in so many ways. And I wanted to explore that because living in New York City, home is really transient. When I first came here for grad school, when I graduated, my grad school program was 2 years. I actually lived in a friend's living room for about 6 to 7 months while I was job searching. I didn't have enough money to get my own place, so I literally slept on her couch. And it was a very interesting time in my life. I was also, not in the best relationship. So, I think about where I was then and how how far I've come. Now I live with 3 wonderful people who 2 of which I met in the middle of quarantine of COVID. And we have formed a bond and a family of our own, and we help each other grow and we challenge each other. And to think that once upon a time, I didn't really think that I could make a home in New York. And now I have, because I'm the one who chose how to foster that. And so I really wanted to explore how we create home for ourselves and how we find home within ourselves. And the other aspect of that, the other reasoning behind that was a lot of people are very surprised that I am from South Florida. And I know that for a lot of people, it's like the outback of the United States. And it is in a lot of ways, but I didn't have that realization until I moved to New York, and this, by no means is comparative to a lot of people who are moving, from across the world, but it is a culture shock to move to New York, regardless if you're living next door, in another state, or you're moving from across the world. And as me, from someone from South Florida, I didn't consider myself, a person who grew up in the deep South. Florida is a weird mixed bag of a lot of different cultures and beliefs and backgrounds. And you have these interesting pockets, right? I moved from New York to Florida when I was 3. I didn't have any recollection of New York, but we moved to Miami. Miami is a community of people from different islands. You know, you have Cubans, you have Puerto Ricans, you have Haitians, you have a mixed bag. You just have people from all different sorts of backgrounds, and it's people of color, and it's people speaking different languages. And that was very much a big central part of my childhood, right? So Florida to me was never this strange land in some ways, but I also grew up, my family specifically, by the time I was in middle school, we moved to Broward County, which is entirely different from Dade County. Far more, I would say, just reserved. You have obviously far more white people. Like, it's just a different environment altogether. I had a very split experience of Florida, at least South Florida. And that's another thing, South, Central, and North Florida are entirely different. It's 3 states combined into one. And I always say the more north you go, the more southern it gets, in thinking and belief systems. But all that to say, when I left Florida to move to New York, I always had this draw. I feel like New York is a place for people who just don't really fit in entirely where they come from. And not necessarily because they're actually an oddball, but because they might be a little bit more queer in thought. They might be a little bit more progressive in thought or a little more ambitious. Like, I think New York draws in a certain type of energy and a certain type of person, which I think is important because it's a place that can chew you up and spit you out. Which it did for me, in a lot of ways and several times. So that was part of the culture shock, like things are far more rough around the edges. I was exposed to far more people, far more ideas. And because of that, there is so much unlearning and there are so many mentalities and so many experiences that I've reflected upon, latent trauma of things that, I experienced racially, emotionally, even within my own home, my own upbringing. It's not until you learn more about the healthier ways that things should be, until you have to fend for yourself, until you have to take care of yourself, until you have to learn not to compare yourself to others and recognize your own talents, until you have to learn to achieve this balance to live in a place like New York, that you even recognize what you were collecting along the way in your youth and your childhood, in your original home, the first place that you're from. And so I've been in this space of really reflecting on how much I have grown and also how much I want to continue to grow. So I'm really wanting to use this season to explore how we create home for ourselves, because I'm looking to keep creating a solid foundation. I see my body and my mind and my soul as a temple, which is a type of home, and I want to nourish it and I want to understand it. And so with that being said, I want to kind of travel through the past, the present, and, the things to come, the places, the experience, the people to come through this season. And I wanted to also balance out the timing. It was really long. I had a friend one time tell me that my podcasts were the same length as feature films, which I really loved, but I could also understand that that is a bit much to take in. And so I really, I want to listen to y'all because I'm so appreciative of having an audience that's curious about what I want to say, but it needs to be digestible, right? So instead of having Are You For Real was in season 1, where I would talk about different news segments and things taking place in the world, I'm actually going to replace that this season. I think that I love discussing things that are taking place in the world, but it's a daunting time. It's a difficult time. And especially as a Black woman, that's a space that I think sometimes I need to learn to protect a little bit better. And sometimes expressing everything on a microphone is actually really exhausting. And sometimes it's easier for me to go within and kind of keep those aspects of my mind in a more intimate space and in more intimate settings. But, obviously when it calls for it, when something is relevant, if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. Y'all know how I am. This is my show. But I'm going to replace that segment with pot stirrers. And pot stirrers are going to be short stories. The series that's going to take place in this season is the Florida Folly series. And essentially, I love to write, and I haven't had the opportunity to really explore that. So I am going to be writing audio stories about growing up in Florida and reading them to y'all. Because some of them are really funny, some of them are really bizarre. I truly did grow up in the outback of the United States and didn't even realize it. And so it's really funny in hindsight to look back and think of certain experiences and think to myself, oh shit, you didn't experience that growing up? No, you didn't. That didn't happen at your pool party, or that person never said that to you, or, it's just really funny when I say these things to people and they're just like, oh my gosh, like you grew up in a really bizarre place. And I'm sure there's more bizarre places, but you Google Florida man and the headlines are interesting to say the least. So I really wanted a place to explore that aspect of my life as well, because it's been a journey to get here. In a lot of ways, and I'm really thankful for that. And there are still some tough spots that I'm learning to get through and some challenges and more homes that I'm creating for myself. So before we actually jump into, the new segments, I still have a word to the wise. I'm going to definitely keep it short this week. But I'm very excited about the conversation that you're going to get to hear in this episode. The audio story this week is actually about how I got my nickname, Dash, which is really, fun to share because I really feel like it's the best way to kick off an origin story. But I'm really excited about the conversations, much more so because I get to talk to two people who I really admire. I'm always inspired by the LGBTQ plus community as someone who is queer and really still trying to figure that out and what that means for myself. It is truly necessary for me to find people who are learning to own every aspect of themselves, despite, how the world can give conflicting messages on doing so. So I speak to my cousin Aaliyah, and I'm also speaking to one of my newest friends, Miles, who is actually my roommate's brother. And they are both trans. And the reason that is an important detail to mention, and I hope one day it won't be, is because the conversation that I have with them both is about choosing your name and how your name can make you feel at home in your body. And when it doesn't make you feel at home in your body, how do you navigate that? And so it was a really intriguing conversation. I really am so thankful to them both because they were so open about their own experiences. And I really think these conversations are important to have. And I'm excited to share it with y'all. Because I had two different conversations with them both, I actually couldn't speak to them both at the same time. I'm going to do something a little bit differently. I'm going to be sharing Miles's conversation within this episode, but you can actually exclusively listen to Aaliyah's portion on Instagram TV on Just a Dash. My Instagram handle is Just a Dash Podcast, and on SoundCloud. So I'm going to have that conversation separately placed just so you can listen to it, because again, I want to keep these episodes a little bit more digestible. But my cousin, Miles is incredible. I just want to say that off the bat, but I really wanted to share Leah's story as well because I grew up with her, and to see her journey and to see how she has just flourished into who she is and continue to have the confidence she has and to be the groundbreaker that she is. It's really, I feel so empowered and so grateful that I have a direct family member, in my life to keep me motivated in exploring and owning my own autonomy. So really just enjoyed those conversations with them. But, before we jump into our pot stirrers and before we jump into that conversation, I do want to give you your word to the wise. So here we go. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Let's get into our word to the wise. So I'm going to keep it real with y'all. I had so much trouble finding a word to the wise because I have really been in a interesting mental space in general. Sometimes reading inspirational words all over social media is not helpful. Sometimes it's actually really overwhelming when you're just seeing constant different advice and how you should navigate this relationship and what this person actually, means to you, or what the dynamic is, or how you need to set boundaries, or how you need to show up for yourself, or how you need to work on yourself. It is so much that we're constantly being fed at the same time. And I think that was actually feeding into a lot of, I think it was just making it really difficult for me to actually digest and trust my own intuition. And I've come to realize that a lot of the time it's really not as complicated as I'm making it, my intrusive thoughts are not, as they're not true, essentially, or what I imagine to be the worst thing in the world, or what I take on as being my responsibility, I spiral a lot. So I really, I think sometimes you can feel paralyzed in making any sort of decision or making any sort of choices. And so you kind of get stuck, and I don't think I've felt that way entirely, but I have felt that way in different aspects of my life. And I think the other part of that is when you set up a timeline for yourself to achieve certain goals. For some people, if they have to move their timeline, they have that sort of flexible nature and it doesn't really bring them down. I can be so incredibly self-critical and I will beat myself up and really feel like, well, that opportunity has passed, the window has passed, or I'm a loser. I haven't, completed this by this time. And I know that sounds so crazy because I don't think people would assume that I think that way of myself. I think people have, I've had coworkers describe me as like being intimidating and like having my shit together. And like maybe, in some ways I do, especially if other people are relying on me. But when it comes to like my own internal monologue, it's a lot of work for me to be kind to myself. It's a lot of work for me to not bring myself down. It's a lot of work for me to believe in myself and to tell myself that you can do it. Or, hey, just because that didn't work out doesn't mean it will never work out. Or it doesn't mean that you should give up. And so I'm saying all that because the word to the wise that I found this week, I appreciate the simplicity of it because I have a tendency to overcomplicate. And I heard it last minute, actually before recording. I recently rewatched Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And first of all, that movie is flawless. That movie is 10 out of 10. It's so interesting because I'll see like 7 out of 10 on, those like rating sites and whatnot. But that movie was flawless. I can't actually find anything wrong with it after rewatching it, I think now a third time. It's just a perfect blend of, representing Asian culture and martial arts and tying it into the Marvel universe so seamlessly. It's really well cast. Simu as the lead. He's phenomenal. Been watching like all his interviews, just like a phenomenal human being, even outside of the role, like just completely well-rounded, his experience with immigrant parents. Anyway, this is besides the point. But this quote actually comes from that film. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it and really felt re-inspired by it because the two lead characters, Sean and his friend Katie, who's played by Awkwafina, Katie specifically can't really seem to figure out what she wants to do with her life, or she kind of feels like going down one route, you never know what the outcome might be. And she doesn't want to waste time. Like she wants to enjoy her life. She wants to have fun. And she just kind of feels lost, but she also rationalizes it by basically saying like, I don't know what decision to make, so I'm not going to make a decision at all. And I really resonated with that because sometimes your anxieties or your fears or the obstacles or the growth feels so daunting that you just get paralyzed in doing nothing. And you feel, or not even that doing nothing, but you feel stuck, like internally. And at a certain point in the film, they end up in a village. I don't want to give everything away, but they end up in this village. They all have different talents, shooting arrows. This is obviously an MC universe, this is a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. So, there's superheroes in it and they have weapons, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the ladies gives her a bow and arrow. And she says to her, this is in the middle of training. I've skipped entirely, the middle section of this film, but, follow me. She says to her, after she's gone on this monologue about all these ways that she's just basically can't make a decision in her life, a choice in her life, she says to her, if you aim at nothing, you hit nothing. And that really struck me because I think sometimes we're so afraid of what we don't know. We're so afraid that the outcome might be so much worse or so terrible. Our minds, I know my own mind, the intrusive thoughts are next level, y'all. The way my mind can spiral, where it can take me. Shout out to my imagination because she's popping off. But it helps me kind of recenter myself and realize, listen, you might fuck up, but that doesn't make you a fuck up. Things also could be phenomenal and beyond what you could have ever imagined, because a lot of the time, that's the way the world works. It's when you have faith and release fear, you strike gold. But the thing is, if you don't ever make a decision, if you don't ever choose, if you exist in this kind of void, you're never going to find anything beyond what you're looking for. And you're always going to feel this sense of dissatisfaction. And I'm keeping that vague and I'm keeping that broad because it really isn't just about one thing. It's a mentality, it's an approach, it's a mindset. And sometimes it's a difficult mindset when you find yourself at a fork in the road, whether it's about making a decision for a job or making a decision about a relationship or a friendship, especially things that you've been in for a long time or that you have a lot of comfortability in. If you stay there and you act like there's nothing, no goals that you can achieve or that it's just too overwhelming, you're never going to move. You're never going to feel motivated. You have to set your eye on something, and it should be, and it doesn't have to be this way, but I think for myself, I have found that keeping it incremental is probably the best bet, right? So if I have a bad habit, I've tried to do shit cold turkey, and it doesn't work for me because I have a dependent sort of personality. And I also am a person who, it takes me a long time to break a pattern and to break a routine because I am a person of routine. I'm a planner. So I have to do incrementally. That means I have to, if I'm trying to eat out less, here's a perfect example. And I know that sounds so basic for this quote, but that's something that I've been trying to do. It's not going to be that you're just going to stop and you're just going to completely start cooking again and you're just going to have it in you. Absolutely not. And if I set myself up with that sort of expectation, of course I'm going to fail. And of course I'm going to then disappoint myself. And then of course I'm going to be upset at myself. But I could prevent that by creating a goal to aim at that is feasible, that I know I can hit, right? So I'm taking this quote and I'm expanding it right now, y'all, because this is how it kind of flourished in my mind and how it kind of blossomed in my mind. And I found it helpful. But let's say, just getting back to what I was saying, instead, I tell myself, you know what? You're allowed to eat out 3 times in a week. Pick the days that make most sense and do your best to stick to it. If you do 4 times this week, it's okay. But by the time we get to week 3, you need to be at 3 meals a week. It's got to be in a space that's manageable. And I think something else that I've found for myself that I thought was really special about that film and that woman saying to Katie, if you aim at nothing, you hit nothing, is that she enabled her in a way that allowed her to feel empowered. Because when she said it to Katie and she gave her that bow and arrow, it's not that she made the choice for her, but she gave her the tool. She gave her a metaphor, and she gave her something to recognize that she has it in her, what she needs in order to elevate in the way that she wants. By the end of the film, she's a central part in saving the world. And that's all I'll say for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it's an excellent film. And like I said before, you should see it. But, I just wanted to, I know that's such a topsy-turvy, spirally way of navigating through that word to the wise, but it's been really helpful. It struck me. It struck a chord with me, and it's something that I really needed to hear in that moment. So I hope that it's been helpful to y'all, and I hope that it made sense, and I hope that you can take it step by step, because you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are, and your intrusive thoughts aren't true. And it's important to trust your intuition and aim for something, and you will hit it. And even if you fail, it's okay, because you have another opportunity. You've learned from that, and now you get to grow and apply something differently, whether that's how you've treated a person or how you've treated yourself. It doesn't matter. Forgive yourself and believe in yourself and know that there's something greater ahead and that you don't have to get in your own way. I'm rooting for you. Okay, y'all. I'm very excited for this next segment. We're about to pop into the pot stir. You're going to hear my very first audio story that I've ever done. This one is called What's in a Name? Please enjoy the very first audio story of the Florida Folly series and the conversation that will take place afterwards. Say what? With Miles. Like I mentioned before, Elias will be on Instagram. and on SoundCloud. And we'll wrap up the show with the Rec Room because y'all know I'm always trying new things and I'm always wanting to share. But thank you so much for listening, and it's going to be a great time. All right, y'all. Let's get into it. I know it's so cliche, but the only way to begin this story is with the Shakespearean trope. A rose is a rose by any other name. I mean, that infers I'd still be me, even if my name weren't Dash. Or Dashka. Which already puts a wrench in the phrase, doesn't it? Let's be real. A rose isn't a rose by any other name, but it does smell just as sweet regardless. While the phrase is inspiring in intent, that is to diminish delineations of status, class, wealth, power, and in the case of Romeo and Juliet, a name which held all of the previous in its stead, in reality, a name mattered then, and it matters now. After all, you know me as Dash, but others as Gabby, and further back, as Addie. The origin of an unconventional name doesn't withstand the simplicity of an idealistic trope. But this isn't a memory of doomed romanticism. I have those, trust me, but rather of evolving realities. After spending primary school being the sometime curiosity of conversations and a wild amount of mispronunciations, I wanted to understand why my name was so outside the box. I assumed up until double digits that it was linked to Haitian ancestry. After all, my sister and father had presumably unique names too. I just assumed having a different name was a family thing, until I was old enough to realize it wasn't. Let's just say South Florida tweens have a knack for passive-aggressive bullying. And because I was like an angsty teen, like duh, I resented being different. The identity crisis was next level. I was 13 years old and trying very hard to present as goth, all while listening to Celine Dion secretly on my Walkman. In all honesty, it just felt like the smartest move to surround myself by the outsiders. I've been a floater all my life, and I used to think it was because I'm the sort of person who can get along with just about everyone. But I also really struggled to find my footing and a sense of security. I didn't feel at home in my body, and my name was a byproduct of that. So what did I do at 13 to combat these very dramatic feelings? I did some research, and I found out what my name meant and the origins of it. Remember, I was 13. So it became my conversation distractor, and most of the time it helped place me as the funny girl with the cool Swahili name. Yes, y'all. My first claim to fame was Dashka being an iteration of dashiki, which means loose-fitting skirt. I was just grateful my name was linked to some sort of blackness, because it's clear Dashka didn't originate on any island. And it was helpful in surviving the cruelty of middle school taunts. That is, until Urban Dictionary deemed dashiki slang for fucking a girl really fast. True story. But the point is, I had enough going on. Lanky limbs, terrible eyesight, eczema that gave me skin rivaling mole people. Let's just say puberty was rough. So turning my name to some cool oddity for people to ogle at was better than it being made fun of. That became my MO for surviving a lot of uncomfortable circumstances in my youth. Get ahead of the assumptions and stereotypes with humor and sarcasm. Since then, I've learned many different definitions of what my name means or is attributed to. It's obviously Eastern European, specifically Russian, which by coincidence is my favorite of the translations I've learned. I came across an old Russian geezer in my grad school days who suggested it was jargon for friend in his native tongue, an additive to a person's name to indicate a more affectionate relationship to them. I looked it up briefly enough to know if it was true, but my man was talking about Russia a lot, so I've taken the explanation as legit. And while I don't need to validate my name anymore, I like thinking that the universe bestowed a name that perhaps reveals my greatest purpose: to be a floater, a friend to all. Dashka is the core of who I am. She's my innocence and my ignorance. She's the little girl who experienced a world of prejudice and otherness unknowingly and still managed to climb trees and belt in the shower and run through the grass barefoot. And at 13, I was finding every reason to try and hold on to her, to love her, to not be ashamed of all the ways she felt different and unseen. But here's the thing about that age. It's not just about hormones. For me, it's also when I started to think for myself. My environment was beginning to shift. And I was hearing words, ideas, and concepts that were so outside of my worldview and comfort zone. It was my first departure from adolescence, which meant I couldn't be Dashka anymore. I didn't have enough representation around me to understand that my name didn't need to define my identity. But instead, the chatters of voices around me influenced and expanded my own in the cruelest of ways. I believe that being different made me bad. Yet still, I didn't enter high school with my current moniker. I spent the first few years of high school toying with different alter egos. In math class, I was Gabby, inspired by and taken from my last name, Gabrielle, or as we say in America, Gabriel, or the white woman who found it a little more palatable. Addie in French class because of my middle name, Adelaide, or again, as we would say in America, Adelaide. Yep, the capital of Australia. But in more fluid spaces, aka Drama Club, nicknames entered a different territory altogether, some of which had no link to my name itself, and others that were a little offensive. But that's a story for another time. My favorite, though, was Da Shakira, because my hips don't lie. But I digress. When my older sister and her friends graduated, I had a small window to carve out who I wanted to be for the remainder of high school. And sure, I wanted to be cool and unique, but more than anything, I wanted to belong. And then all my birthday wishes were answered during a random family get together right before senior year. It was that simple. I don't remember all the details, but I know this. I like to barbecue. I'm good at it, and it allows me to appear social without having to actually speak to anyone in a family setting. Anyhow, I'm manning the grill for my Aunt Elle, who is a fan of mine. She likes my laugh, which has always been boisterous, very much to my mother's dismay. And I like Aunt Elle. She's colorful, flamboyant, shady as hell, and definitely high maintenance, which makes her the perfect combination for pure entertainment. And during the shindig, she was incredibly amused by my ability to barbecue. It's not every day a young Haitian girl insists on handling a quote male activity. So throughout the evening, Elle would ask me to grill more meat, but the more alcohol in her system, the harder remembering my name became. And at a certain point, she just couldn't get past the DASH and just kept calling me Dash. And well, as you can imagine, I didn't hate it. I mentioned it on the car ride home, and I remember laughing with my family at the mishap. But secretly, I was mulling it over in my head. Dash. It was short and sweet and kind of sounded like a surfer. Which made sense because I was also really into rocket power for longer than necessary. But Dash just had a simple ring to it, and it felt true to me. It was part of my name, and yet it made me feel known. I'd never considered that possibility. And most importantly, it was the first time I felt that being different could also be good. And just like that, I became Dash. I entered college and adopted the introductory phrase, "My name is Dashka, but you can call me Dash." And it's rolled off my tongue ever since. And it's not to say that I don't struggle with that choice at times. There was a point after moving to New York and seeing how boldly everyone claimed their individuality that I wondered if I'd shrunk myself for the sake of being accepted. I contemplated who should use either name and why. Dashka almost became like an armor in a way. It guards the most sacred parts of myself. But nowadays, the more a person seeks to learn more about what Dash is short for, the more I've embraced all the names that I've navigated through over the years. Because here's the thing about a name, about your name. It really doesn't matter how complicated or simple it is, or even what it is, because despite where the story began, it's not the name that ever made the rose sweet. It's the rose itself. You embody your name, whichever you choose, then or now. It's an expression, but not a definition. And that's what Dash has become for me. She's a little girl who's growing up and embracing the journey of planting seeds in a garden full of sweet flowers, none of which are so because of what she's called, but because of who I am. And now you know just a dash more of my story. It is very much about, and I mentioned it to you via email too, but it's very much about home. And how do you find home and what shapes a home for you within yourself and around you? And a huge part of that, I think for me, my full name is Dashka, but most people call me Dash. And I wanted to have this conversation about how our names can feel or not feel like home, because I grew up under that Venn diagram of having like an unusual and foreign name. And, the history of having a Russian name while being a Black person, is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Yeah.
Has always led to, a range of curiosities. And sometimes it's been positive, sometimes it's been negative, and it's been an insightful journey of kind of accepting my own identity, because obviously I don't go by Dashka, I go by Dash, but I spent so much of my life wishing for a regular name. I don't know what that means anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
So true, yeah.
I don't know what that means anymore, but I adopted a nickname. And originally when I adopted the nickname Dash, it wasn't like rooted in necessarily something positive. It was more that I was tired of people saying my name wrong. I wanted something that just sounded like a little bit more, quote unquote, again, normal. But that has shifted for me now, right? I love my name. And a big part of why I love my name is because a lot of my identity with my own queerness has shifted. And I love that my name is not really tied to any one gender. Like no one sees my name and knows that I'm a cisgendered woman or that I'm queer or
Definitely.
that I'm this or that I'm pansexual. And I kind of love
Hmm.
that it's abstract and that it's fluid, right? So I've gone to grow into it and I've gone to make it my home. But I really kind of wanted to tap into other experiences when it comes to names because while I have like my own journey, like the trans experience is obviously a little bit more layered than that, when it comes,
Yeah.
to a relationship with your name. And I thought that even though there's these emotional overlaps that I empathize with that resonate, it really allows
Hmm.
me to also consider the privileges I have, right? In how I get to choose my own name because names are they're so vital and essential to who we are. And I'm going to jump into the
Yeah.
history a little bit. Before I do that, though, like I said, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. So tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you love what you do.
All right. I'm Miles. I'm Miles. I am about to turn 21. I'm a junior at Emerson College. Well, actually, I guess now I'm a senior. I just finished my junior year.
Oh my
So I'm going into my
God.
senior year now,
Slay.
at Emerson. Yeah, exactly, Slay. And I love film. That's what I major in. I don't really know why exactly I love film. I just always loved media, consuming media. Like, I mean, I love good film. I love bad film. I love good TV. I love bad TV. I'm currently watching like Real Housewives of New Jersey, which is like some of the worst TV you could probably ever find. I just always loved media and watching things. And like, me and my sisters we would watch movies all day when we were younger. And we would always get into phases where we would watch like one specific movie over and over again and stuff like that. And, yeah, I just love it, and I went to school for it, and it's super fun, and yeah, I guess that's
I love that. It
it.
is definitely I'm also that same way when it comes to like content and film and like my passions. Like part of the reason why the podcast is called Just a Dash is obviously because it's like a riff off my name. But also it's
Hmm.
the idea that like I love like any sort of like creative content and just like a dash of
Yeah,
everything. And that includes like film and movies. So I totally feel you. I just
microdosing content
yeah, come on now. you know? And it's true though,
microdosing
because
all
I love
media
storytelling and I love that there's all these
for
different sort
sure.
of like imaginative worlds and all these different sorts of realities, even just like trash TV. Like, I remember in high school watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians and like could never watch
For
that
sure.
now. Tried it again. I was like, just I guess I've
Not
grown
into the
out of
new
it.
one.
But at the time though, it really made me grateful because I was like listen, I may not have a lot of money, but I ain't crazy and white. Like so, it
For
really
sure.
does give you different perspectives. So I totally get that with film and storytelling and content. But
So
thank you for joining me on the podcast and thank you for joining me for this
absolutely.
conversation. And obviously I mentioned it before, but part of the reason I wanted to have you on the show was because you have a unique experience, as a trans person and as someone who has changed their name. So when I was looking at the history of names, because I was thinking to myself, like, we know in the modern day, like, why names are so important, right? Like
Yeah.
they tell us the communities we belong to, they tell us the place, in the world that we have. But when I was looking at the history of names, it was so interesting because ironically, the very first thing I kept seeing was like, according to the Bible, one of the very first acts of
Great.
free will exercised by man was the act of naming. And I was like, okay, well, you've left out a lot of people in that free will, but sure, let's go with
So
that.
true.
But it was so interesting because names have served like different purposes from being like practical but now
Yeah.
all of that has shifted and all those sorts of things have evolved to be like these deeply personal, cultural, familial, historical connections, which is really wonderful. But I think
Yeah.
because of that, it's so integral to our identity, right? Your name is like given to you at birth, you hear it over and over again and it defines you. So it really is, I think, in a very almost like intriguing and exceptional sort of journey when you hear about someone who has not only changed, their name, but they're changing their name because they're changing their entire identity to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And not even entire identity, but definitely facets of it, that make them feel
Yeah.
more at home in their body. So
For sure.
My first question for you, what do you feel like your relationship to your name is, and how has it evolved over time for you?
Yeah, I mean, so at least with my dead name, I just, like, never really, like, lived for her, obviously, but, I also just, like, it wasn't a I remember, like, for some reason what's sticking out to me right now is, like, um, when I mean, you're definitely gonna feel this way, like, your name's never on anything, like, to like, a license plate, little, like, a knickknack, a souvenir,
Right,
your name's
right.
never on anything. My name wasn't on anything either, and then when I was, like, coming out and stuff like that, I was really kind of struggling to find a name that, like, nothing that grabbed me. I didn't feel like anything when I said it over and over again, nothing resonated with me, I guess, and that was weird because I was like, "Well, maybe it's not supposed to resonate, like, maybe this
Mm,
means nothing, or maybe it means more than nothing." I don't know, it was very confusing for a while because I was like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just something that my parents chose
right.
one day. You know what I mean? So I was like,
Yeah,
maybe it's not
yeah.
supposed to resonate with me. Um, so I went back and forth for a while, but then I ended up telling one of, my best friends, like, that like, those feelings that I just didn't know what to do, like, I just felt like I had no name, like, I like, I didn't know what people should call me and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and, I knew that I wanted to keep my initials, which was, like, M was part of my first name, and so she just started sending me a bunch of different M, like, quote, unquote, "boy" names,
Mm,
and, and, like, we just, like, went through, like, a, like, list of baby names together, and then she sent me Miles, and I was like, "Hey, like, that actually does kind of resonate in some way with me, like,
yeah.
I'm seeing that." And then weird enough, like, after I kind of, like, adopted that for a little bit, was trying it on, I was like, "Okay, yeah, like, I think that's my gig." Um my when I finally, like, told my grandfather and stuff about it and, like, my family, my grandfather told me that, um, I personally never did first communion, but I don't know if you have done first
I
communion
have.
or
Your
any.
girl has done
Okay.
all the levels of Catholicisms.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I haven't, but I was the only one of my siblings to not. I guess they just, like, kinda dropped the ball on me, which is, like, totally fine, like, totally I'm cool
And
with
here
it.
we are.
Exactly, exactly. So so, like like, I did not lose any sleep over that. But so, like, I did not know this whatsoever, but my grandfather ended up telling me that when you choose a new name or whatever,
Mhm.
um yeah, he ended up choosing Miles, but spelled differently with a Y.
Wow.
And so I never knew that, but when I told him, he was like, "Yeah, that was actually the name I chose when I did my first communion just 'cause I just liked it."
I really love that he
Um
stole your thunder. He was like, "You're not an original, but sure."
No,
I
absolutely,
love that.
absolutely. No, but I also kind of liked that, like, now it resonated with me in some way, and I
That's
didn't
so
know why, and then I'm like,
serendipitous.
"Aw," like, it did have some kind of connection to
Yeah.
my family in some kinda way.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, a sleigh.
Do you feel like with your dead name, because it's really interesting. I remember even when before you had transitioned, obviously I still knew Molly,
Mhm.
and she would never refer to you by your birth name. She had a nickname for you, which I don't know if your family still calls you Mern.
No, they don't, but yes, that was basically, like, my in-between name
Okay.
that, that had started long before also, but, like, that's kind of that time where I was saying to, like, my best one of my best friends, like, "I feel like I have no name, like, Mern isn't a name,"
Mm,
and that's just what people are calling me right now because,
right.
like, not only is it ju has it just been my nickname forever, but it just happens to be, like, pretty much gender neutral too.
Right,
So,
right.
like
Yeah, no,
so they
that's
were
very
like,
real though.
Mern has
Yeah.
no gender, so they just, like, kind of
It
started
was like an
calling me
in
Mern more
between.
often than not. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I kind of felt like, there was a time where, like, afterwards, like, I did kind of like, in high school, I did kind of not reject Mern, but there was just some people that I went to high school with that I felt were not accepting of the transition and were hiding behind using Mern.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Cut
Mern's got
it.
to
Cut
go.
it.
Mern's
Snip
got
it.
to go. Yeah, exactly. But like exactly. But Mern, it was just a funny nickname, and that's like kind of what everyone called me even before I came out or transitioned. It
Yeah.
had nothing to do with my transition or anything. It was just like a silly
I
little
love that it was
nickname.
kind of like though this like almost this stepping stone unknowingly, like this
Exactly,
unconscious stepping
yeah.
stone. I had a lot of those, I've it's really funny because I actually can place like where in my life someone knows me from based on the nickname they have for me. Because in
That's so
high
interesting.
school, everyone called me Gabby, which is from my last name, Gabriel. So there's very few
Oh,
people
okay.
left who call me Gabby. And then there's like, people who, there are people also like, if they're affectionate enough, they can call me Dashy. But, there's levels to the nicknames, okay? Like,
There's
not
levels.
everybody gets access to all the nicknames. Like, I have coworkers who just call me D. I have one friend who calls me Doe. So it's like kind of interesting how names are also tied
Yeah,
to the people around us and kind of how you were saying some people were using that almost as something to hide behind, as to not accept you
yeah,
entirely for who you were. Do you feel like
yeah,
now your relationship to Miles is really kind of central to your identity, or is it kind of another thing where it's like it's something that I've because your relationship to your name, it's not the same as another person, right? Because you didn't connect to
yeah.
the one you were born with. So was that kind of like a rebirth? Like a did you have to adapt to
Yeah,
that?
it's kind of funny whenever, like, someone says they like my name, if I know them well enough, I'll be like, "Thanks, I picked it myself." But,
Come
like
on, pick up line.
that goes through my brain every single time someone, like, even when if a stranger says that to me. Like, I used to work in a movie theater when I was in high school, and I remember someone at the movie theater saying, like, "Oh, Miles, that's such a, like, nice name," and I literally was about to tell just absolutely trip this stranger out by saying, like, "Thanks, I picked it." She'd be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
You're fired.
Yeah, literally. Um, but so yeah, like now I don't know, like I like Miles. I definitely like, and now I used to have so much trouble thinking about myself younger as well too, and like disassociating like my younger self and my like tweenage self, and then
Hmm.
like my teenage self, like once I came out and stuff like that. Um, but then when I started, like, actually, like, using Miles and all this stuff and, like, feeling like okay, I have a name, I have an identity and stuff like that, like, I see little me as little Miles, you know what I mean?
Uh,
I don't see it as
yeah.
that little, like, dead name,
Hmm.
like, girl
I
or
love
what
that.
have you.
Yeah, because you
So,
can
yeah, I
almost
feel
look
like
at that differently now. Your perspective of yourself is like a different lens to look at
yeah,
your
definitely.
memories. Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I feel like, with the Mern in between, I felt like I didn't have an identity because I didn't know what people should call me, and then once I figured out, like, Miles is what I wanted people to call me, it definitely, like, helped me be a little bit more secure in that sense of identity because definitely, like, in the Mern, like, in between, like, it was very much like baby trans person, like,
Yeah.
just dipping their toe in trying to figure something out, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
you're
like,
unsure of
Miles is like
yourself.
yeah, fully of like becoming a fully of first step to becoming a fully evolved trans person.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well that actually like seamlessly like flows into my next question, which is do you
That
feel
part.
at home in your body now with your name?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely once like once I found Miles like as my name, like that was like there was no more questions, you know what I mean? Like I was
Mm,
like because I went through a lot with like coming out with my dad and stuff like that. And also my oldest sister, she really liked my dead name. She really loved my dead
mm,
name, and that was something that she struggled with because she did really love my dead name. And I don't think that that's like transphobic or like invalid for her to feel because like I'm her brother. Like we're super close. My
mhm,
family's all
mhm.
like really close. And but then once she saw how happy I was like with other people calling me Miles and all of these things, and like I just I feel like everyone around me says this. I've heard it so many times and it sounds so cliche because it's like everyone says to trans people, but like it really is true that I just like really became like so much like visibly happier and like
Mm,
myself once people around me started also seeing me the way and addressing me the way I saw and felt like
right.
myself. So I definitely feel like at home, but you know, I there was a long time where like I was that was the majority of my transition was just like changing my name and pronouns. And you know, I mean it does get old after a little bit because
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me at least I needed more physically and I
Yeah.
needed more with that. But it was also just the nature of like coming out when you're like 15.
Yeah, I do think though that's a good point though, because I remember, growing up with the name Dashka, and I think like even though you're given a name, you become your name, because you don't have a
Yeah.
personality when you're born. I wasn't born this way. That would be frightening if I came out of my mother's womb just like gabbing like this. But over like I feel like you create whatever your name is because I'm sure there's another Dashka out there who's not like as talkative as I am, but it fits who they
Yeah,
are. And it's so
absolutely.
interesting because there are parts of me that, when I'm at home with, my Caribbean family and they're saying my name with the proper accent where I feel this
Hmm.
kinship to it. But Dash is very much who I am. And there's not really a way to explain why that is. It just encompasses
Yeah, for sure.
my soul, my spirit, what I feel
Yeah.
like. But I feel like when I hear the name Miles, I don't hear a lot of people named Miles. So that would be the first thing I say is like, oh, I love that name. I don't hear a lot of people named Miles. And then like it opens a
Yeah, I do
door,
get that
you know?
more often than I thought I would. Also, my middle name, I actually kept.
Mm,
So like my parents, like this is like my birth middle name, and my middle name is Honey. Um,
stop.
and
That is iconic.
most people either don't believe me or I mean that's basically how it
That's
goes. Most
fair.
people are like, I need to see some form of
I
identification, like
love
your name's
that.
Honey. But like my birth name has always been I kept my middle name because at first I was trying to go like super mask. Like I was like,
Mm,
I'm gonna change it to Hunter. I'm gonna be like Miles
I'm
Hunter.
screaming.
Like like I
Come
don't even
on. Yeah. Oh my
like I was
gosh.
like,
I feel like you should be
I
wearing
am
flannel
masked.
and like chopping
Exactly.
wood.
Yeah. Exactly, like, so masked, and then I was like, "I'm not masked."
Hmm.
So I also I think it made my mom and my sister, like, I feel like I don't know if I would say my sister so much, but, like, I feel like it made my mom happy that I kept my middle name and, like because it wasn't anything with them or the names that they chose me, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was just this thing that, you know, gender
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
little thing called gender. And so yeah, I also just really I liked Honey and I liked the way Miles sounded with it too. Miles Honey, it just rolls.
It
So
does roll off
yeah.
really well. It is a great signature name. Just heads up everyone, Miles is gonna be famous. But
Oh,
no,
thank
but
you.
honestly, I also love though when you mentioned that you're not this hyper masculine person, and even though you've transitioned,
Yeah.
like that is also like and that's kind of like what I was saying with Dash. Like
I really wanted to be.
yeah.
I really wanted to be.
Do you feel
But
like,
I'm just not.
and you feel like maybe it's interesting though that you mentioned like almost like trying to have a hyper masculine name made you realize, but that's not really reflective of who I am, despite the fact that I'm
Yeah.
transitioning, despite the fact that
Yeah.
I am a man.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I do think a lot of people, I feel like people are also starting to very much get into names that are gender neutral for that reason. We're speaking though about something, and I have another question here that I think this really ties into really well. You mentioned though, like you didn't really see your name anyway in a lot of places. I definitely didn't see Dashka anywhere.
Mhm.
That is very much when you said that, I
Yeah.
was like, every time on a trip, I would be like, yeah, I'm not even going to
Yep.
bother to look. There's nothing there.
Nope. Don't need to look.
And there's
No, it's
still
not
not
there.
anything there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But, what do you feel? I was reading this article that for a lot of trans people, it is almost like kind of crazy as you're changing your name where you realize how many different sorts of like identification your name ends up being a part of, whether it's like on forms or
Mhm.
IDs or like just, when you're speaking. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, when did
Yeah.
you feel that greatest shift in identity for yourself? And when do you feel like the people around you like recognize that and made room for that?
I mean, I remember, okay, so at first, like, I was just kind of having my friends call me Miles and things like that because I felt like my family, things were taking a little bit longer and like super fair and all that. It was just like my friends were also much younger too, so it was easier for them to just like start that kind of transition and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And they were also just like wanting to help me figure it out. And it's like, um, it was hard for my family for us all to figure it out together, you know, like too many cooks in the kitchen. So,
There are a lot of
so
strong personalities over there.
yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen. So, at first, really only my friends were calling me Miles, and then I was in this like school production of Les Mis, and I was just like on the crew, and the teacher asked like, "Do you want me to put your name in the program as Miles?" And I was like, "Yeah," because I didn't think anyone's looking at like lighting design. And then
Fair.
and then I basically outed myself in the program because then like Molly and my sister Molly ended up going, which is Dash's roommate, and she like when she drove me home, she was like, "So do you want us to call you
Oh
Miles?
my
Like you
gosh,
never
that
really
was
said anything."
already just the way you said that. I like hear Molly in my head.
She was like, I didn't ever clarify and I didn't tell them any
Yeah.
like updates of that. So like super fair. Um and I was like, yeah, like I've been having my friends call me that a little bit lately, blah blah. And then I remember like telling everybody else and you know, I feel like once I some you know, I don't have like an awesome relationship with my dad, but I never
Hmm.
have, and that's like super fine. Um, for like a lot of reasons. But so coming out was was another issue for
Hmm.
him.
Like
And so
another
like once
obstacle.
yeah, and so once I realized that that's what it was gonna be, and this is what was happening, I just like didn't really care anymore, you know. Like I just
Mm.
was like, okay, I'm changing everything to Miles. Nothing fucking matters anymore. Like tits out for Harambe. I
Period.
don't know. Like we're just yeah, like it's go time, baby. Like
Yeah.
that's just what it was.
I love that though, because I also feel like in hearing you say that, it's almost like you let go of that last piece of needing to be validated by any sort of
Yeah,
external factor, especially the people who don't support you, who don't root for you, you know. And I feel like
yeah.
that's almost just as important. This is not the same. Even though I do identify as a woman, I think those terms in and of themselves
Hmm.
are kind of
Yeah,
outdated. Just because to be a woman or to be a man does not mean one thing anymore. Like the binary is already like something that needs to
I
be
mean, yeah, for
archived.
sure.
So I almost feel like some of these titles we give each other, and even as
Yeah,
pronouns are shifting or whatnot, I think that's also what always makes me very curious about names because you have kids being named Apple. Thanks, Gwyneth. Like, so like they're just not, they're not names that are tied to gender anymore in that way. So I think it's very interesting how people are starting to feel at home within their own names and by choosing their own names. I mean, do you think names will evolve beyond like our standard binary concept, which obviously I think we've determined the answer is yes. But the second part to that question was, do you think that, how integral do you think shifting a name is for people who are queer or for people who are trans? Like, do you
it's
think that,
everything.
because I think a lot of the time
It's
it's
everything.
everything.
Like it is. I just
Why
think
is it
that it is such a
everything?
small like it's because like you said, a name is everything and it's nothing. So I think that
Hmm.
switching the name and like if someone says like this is the name that I feel like represents me, I want people to refer to me as when they call me, this is what I want to respond to. And I think that
Hmm.
even switching something as small as that shows someone like I respect what you're saying. I respect you as a person. I respect your being. I respect your existence. And I like, you know, it's just like, it's simultaneously the lowest form of respect you can give someone, and I think the highest when you are calling someone by their correct
Mm,
name.
yeah. It's true because when you call someone, if you say someone's name incorrectly,
Yeah.
it stings. And I think it stings even more when you do it in front of other people because it is almost like the most basic thing that you can do, that you can get right. It's the most basic way of showing that you honor how someone sees themselves. So these sorts of conversations are important to have because I do think people need to hold space for other realities and perceptions other than their own when it comes to specific identifications that they may not consider to be that big of a
Yeah.
deal. So it's I'm glad that you said that because I do think it is everything, and I think for a lot of people, even outside of people who identify as trans, like your name is, even for someone who changes their name, I mean, you're going to probably shoot a film one day and like it's going to say your director name on
Hmm.
there and it's going to say
Yeah.
Miles. It's going to say Miles Honey. But like it's going to really, it's going to be a standout, and it's going to stand out in an even more significant way because you got to choose your name and you got
Hmm.
to decide exactly who you get to be. I just think that's so beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing, your journey and your
Absolutely.
experience and your insight because I do think it's unique to everyone, and I don't think, it's a topic that necessarily has to be broad. It
Hmm.
is a subjective thing to talk about your name, but I was very curious about what it's like for, because when I chose my nickname, it was very much like it's still a part
Hmm.
of my name. It wasn't such a huge shift in a way, but it was very interesting to think about that it still made me feel so at
Yeah.
home within myself. So I just love that it was the same for you. And I'm
Yeah,
so
I'm
glad
so
you
glad I
joined
did too. I had
me.
such a blast. Thank you for having me. We had so much fun.
All right, y'all. We have made it to the end of episode 1 of season 2. Oh my gosh. I want to thank both my guests for joining me, even though y'all will hear Aaliyah separately. I really do encourage you to listen to that conversation. But of course, before we wrap up the episode, I do want to share a couple of recommendations. This is the Rec Room. Hey. So I actually am really excited for the recommendation. I didn't mention it earlier, but there's also a new aspect that I've added to Just a Dash. I mentioned it in the bonus episode as well, but I'm a huge fan of music. I feels kind of weird saying that because almost everyone I engage with is a huge fan of music, but it really, for me, I am empathic. I have a strong tendency to really absorb a lot of energy around me. So it's really important that I have something to regulate my emotions, and just, help me regulate being around other people and their energies. And music has always kind of been that channel for me. It's very much been that vessel. So I really love exploring new sounds. I just love music overall, specifically production. And I can sing a little bit, but it's not really my strong suit any longer. I'm definitely more of a listener and more just of an avid fan. And so music is a space that is home for me, in a certain way. And I really wanted to celebrate that. So I've created a playlist. It's called Just a Playlist. And I've just been adding songs to it that I really vibe with, that have always kind of either lifted my spirits or get me in a good dancing mood. I love to dance. I love to groove. Have a really sick production value, just an artist I really admire. But the reason I'm sharing it with y'all is because I really want it to be collaborative. I think the way that I've learned about so many songs is by, listening to other people's playlists. It's friends, it's TV shows, it's commercials. Like I remember my roommates making fun of me one time for having Shazam on my phone because apparently that's an old person's app. Didn't know that, but I love it. And it's been super helpful because that's how I find a lot of new songs. So my point is, please add to that playlist. It is a collaborative playlist on Spotify. It's called Just a Playlist. Yeah, so I think people would really enjoy it. I think my listeners would really enjoy it. And I'd love to hear, what y'all are listening to, what music makes you feel at home, what you vibe with, what you've been really into, how your music has evolved over time. I know since moving to New York, my ear has really expanded into very different forums of sound. Personally, I'm a big fan of Blonde. Hot take, unpopular opinion by Frank Ocean. Blonde doesn't seem to be his most popular album. I think in a lot of ways each song is like the future of music and sound. So like that's what I mean in terms of expanding of sound. But I would love, to hear what other people are listening to. And with that, I also have an additional playlist I wanted to talk about, which is the chakra balancing playlist. I actually shared it on my own personal story, but this is a playlist on Spotify that I discovered years ago, but I have been using far more frequently. And I especially was using it in the middle of quarantine. But essentially, it has different frequencies, different energy frequencies that you can play to help balance out, how you're feeling, essentially. Let's say like I am in a situation where things are vague. I have a tendency to spiral. So I will listen to the release fear and guilt frequency or the release negative energy frequency. And it basically helps realign your chakras and realign your brain waves so that you're able to kind of ground yourself, recenter, and remove those intrusive thoughts from your mind. So that's just one example, but it's a really beneficial playlist. They have so many different frequencies for so many different things like compassion, heart chakra, golden chakra, aura. Like there's so many, like it runs the gamut. It's an amazing playlist to play even while you're sleeping because your mind, when you're sleeping, when you're in REM sleep and REM sleep, that's when your consciousness, really is most absorbing, the energy around you. So if you have these different frequencies, they have DNA repair, they have trauma repair. It's kind of working on your mind as you're sleeping and just helping you heal without feeling like you're doing so much of the brain work. It's a very strong, frequencies are always very strong. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to be playing one, not to do it through headphones. I do that sometimes because I just love that strong energy wave, but it can be very overwhelming, can definitely give you a headache if you, have it directly in your eardrums. So play it on low, but it's an incredible playlist. It's called a chakra balancing playlist on Spotify. They have many, but that's the one that I specifically use. And my last recommendation is a complete departure from both these things, but it is something lately that has been making me feel so at home. I am not a sweets person. I should say that off the bat. I like specific sweet things. Like I love cupcakes from Georgetown and coconut cake. Like those are my two sweets, and Publix cake. Oh my gosh. One of the best things about growing up in Florida is Publix, hands down. But I recently discovered this new dessert combination and I have been in love. It's Van Leeuwen's honeycomb ice cream. It's like this vanilla ice cream with like honeycomb bits in it, and it is divine. And you put hot fudge on it or just chocolate fudge from Trader Joe's. And Trader Joe's also has these Belgian butter waffle cookies. And they're basically like they're like cones, but it's like in the shape of a cookie, like a large oval. And you just dip into that ice cream and fudge and take a bite. And it is just the most delectable thing. It's so enjoyable. It feels like you just like got this gourmet dessert from this restaurant, or you went to Haagen-Dazs, and you didn't spend that much coin, and now you have something that lasts you throughout the month. So I've been spoiling myself with that dessert. It's been really delicious. I just wanted to share that with y'all because sometimes we need to treat ourselves, So that's the Rec Room for this very first episode. I'm so excited to be back on the mic. I'm going to be real with y'all as I'm continuing on this journey. I may not drop episodes every other Wednesday. I might go with the flow a little bit more. It might be just as announced, but I'll definitely let you know. Definitely keep an eye out on Instagram. I'm very excited for how things are shifting, and I'm very excited to be back in this space because it really is. It's my space. It's my safe space. And it's a place for me to kind of navigate through everything that's kind of going in my mind, but in a way that allows me to build community and foster community in a really unexpected way. So I'm so excited, for this season. I'm so excited that y'all are listening. And I will definitely catch you on the airwaves next time, sweet peas. Love y'all. All right. Bye.
Woo! Just a dash. Just a dash. Ooh, just a dash.